Hello. Welcome from the First United Methodist Church in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. This is the Sunday between Christmas and New Year, and that is always an interesting kind of a time. It's Christmas, but people think Christmas is over. It's the end of the year, but you're also thinking of the start of the year. And we here have, as I'll mention later in this presentation, we have an unusual kind of a service on that Sunday, which is not in the sanctuary, but in our fellowship hall. And so I will be doing not a regular kind of a sermon, but a sort of year in review. So I'm going to say a few things here that I find interesting and may or may not be interesting to you. I hope they will be, though, about what the past year around this place has held that has been new. And I'm going to speak of things as if you don't know any of it. If you're familiar with it already, that's great. And I'm going to try to touch on things that may be in the offing in the year ahead. Um, there are going to be things I'll not include. And most of those are because they're things that have been ongoing. I'm going to concentrate on things that have been changes. And some of them are for good and some of them maybe not so good. I want to be honest about this stuff here. But it is definitely a time when things are happening. And it's a good time to stop and take a look at them and think about them. So I invite you to do the same thing with your own life, put it that way. That's going to be the summary of what I'm going to have as my message for the service on Sunday. And that's one reason why I can't just share it per se with you, because I'm going to invite people to share a little bit of their own testimonies if they wish, or simply to sit and think and say, I hope. That's a good question. Um, Maybe not, but it'll be an opportunity to do that. So, here at the start of this, I want to say that we've seen a lot of people who have been very important in this particular faith community go on to glory in the past year. This moment is the first sort of space in time when space in time is a weird way of putting it, but let me rephrase things. It has only been recently in the latter part of this year that we have not had at least one member over the age of 100. People of that generation have largely gone on, and this past year for us meant several people whom we really kind of miss, who have been fixtures. And I mean that in a good way, not a bad way. Uh, in the sense of people who've been steady, people who've been dependable, people who have had an awareness of history, people who have been involved in a lot of different aspects of the church's life and whose wisdom has been valued, have gone on and they are now with their maker and rejoicing, I'm sure, in just the wonder of being with the Lord. But at the same time, as we're happy for them, uh, it also leaves us to sort of redo things and, in many ways, to follow in their steps. Um, so here I am in the church library as we begin our tour, and just want to say at the outset of it, um, Let's start here, but we won't finish until we ourselves end up going on to glory by God's grace. In this room, several things happen. This is a great place. A lot of learning goes on here, and simply to mention the new stuff, we have had come to be with us recently um, at least three retired clergy persons and their spouses. In this case, their wives, um, and it's been great to have them around. Two United Methodist, one American Baptist, and um, that has interesting implications in that these are people that have retired but voluntarily want to continue ministry in some fashion uh, and aren't rusting out somewhere. And among those people, we have one who has been leading seasonal studies here in this room. And we're really grateful for him. He also helps out with communion on Communion Sundays. And that's been terrific. And it's good to see. Our charge conference was led by one of the others, and charge conference is an annual event when we go over how things are and how we hope to see them be. And as in a formal way, we present our reports. We try to do that again in a spirit of prayer and of listening. And recently, we've been doing that in conjunction with other area United Methodist congregations. And it's always led by someone who is either our district superintendent, um, which is someone who assists the bishop in an area to do these things and to work with local churches. Um, and Charge conference is always overseen by one of those. Um, One of the retired people who's with us, I have trouble calling him retired because he's so active, was the one who was assigned to do our charge conference and that of several other area churches all together. And it was beautiful to see everybody sharing their thoughts and their experiences. I would use the old language, their testimony, their witness. And that's the sort of thing that happens in this room sometimes. Finance committee also meets here. So do the trustees. Um, and I said I'd be honest about things. Finances are tricky, but they always are. And we'll make it through. If you're watching and you never get here and want to kick in, we've got a QR code on the website where you can do that if you want. Um, if you're just going through this, understand I'm not doing this just for fundraising or anything like that. But to be honest and open about the things that go on in a church over a year and the things that go on looking ahead. And what I look ahead to in this room is a lot more good learning. Let's move on. So, this is the chapel, the small chapel, not the large sanctuary. And three things that have been very good in the past year happen here at different times and in different ways. First, we started up a Sunday evening service. It's at 6 o'clock every Sunday evening. Rarely have we had a large group. Actually, we've never had a large group. Many Sundays, I'm the only one here. But it's something that we're offering for people as somewhere they can be if they're tied up on Sunday morning with something. For instance, we have somebody who works for uh, the railroads, and he oftentimes is just getting home on Sunday morning after a long shift. And he can go home, he can take a nap, and then later in the afternoon, he gets up and he joins us. We have had people who, for one reason or another, were taking care of somebody sick and couldn't be out on Sunday morning, but Sunday evening have been able to make it. As I say, it's usually small and devotional more than um, big and praise kind of worship, but it is here when people need to be here, and we have communion every week, and that is a great thing too. So that has been a positive this year, and I'm hoping that it will continue to grow over the next few months. If it doesn't, well, we tried, and we'll go from there. So that was one positive thing that happened. Now let me turn to another portion of the room. On one of the side walls at the back of the room, there's a whiteboard. And the whiteboard for the past few months has had some notes on it. Somebody cleaned it off recently, and I'm glad they did. But it'll be written on again soon because we began to hold a grief share group on a regular basis on Wednesday nights. People who have been going through some rough times. And we have two members of the congregation who are very well qualified to help people with that. Um, and so they were leading a group. We had about 20 or so people, up and down. You know how that goes. One week it's there, but it was a steady group of folks that were here, and we're very glad that they were able to come together and share their stories and process things and help one another along in many ways. We'll be doing that again in a few months and start up another group. And I hope you'll stay tuned with developments on that. If you are interested in it, again, contact us and we'll make sure that you're on the list to be informed when things get closer. Now, one last part of the room. This part of the room is the same as the grief share section, but I turned the camera 90 degrees so that you can see this big table that's here. And that is the table, this is the table where our administrative council meets. That's the group within the church that handles all the administrative details that month in, month out need to be attended to. There are representatives on the council from all sorts of different organizations, committees, ministries within the church. The kitchen ministry, the Sunday school, the grief share, the worship committee, the staff parish relations committee, the trustees that tend to the property, the finance committee, all sorts of folks, and then a bunch of at large people. And we try to make sure that it's a broad and representative group. And the mere fact that they meet here is a good thing because they're meeting in what is clearly a place of worship. You can't forget it when you're sitting at this table and looking the way that I am now and seeing the altar and the cross right at the very front of things. And that helps keep the church's purpose in front of the group. Groups like that can sometimes become bogged down in what I once heard somebody call administrivia, which I think is a great word. But having a meeting like that in a place of worship, portion of the building for worship, keeps us very, very focused on the fact that the reason we do all the other stuff is to help one another and to help other people seek, show, and share God's love. And that's what we're here for. And that group this year, one of their big achievements was putting together a comprehensive structural and detailed plan of how they are going to go about that. Now, these kinds of plans come and go. We understand that. Anybody who's spent any time in the work world knows that there are always going to be strategic plans and that they are good for a couple of years. And then circumstances change, and then you revisit the plan. And the council has done that this year. And some of the things that we talk about and some of the things that we're doing because they showed up in the midst of prayer for people. And then they brought them to the council, and we said, sounds appropriate, go for it. And that is often how things happen. It's a group that will ask questions sometimes and say, well, how do you want to do it? What are the details? What do you have in mind? But in the long run, basically, they say, for the most part, um, let's see what we can do. And then after a meeting and everybody having a chance to check in, then we have our prayer and we go forward with the ministry that God has put into all of our hands. And that one of our major happenings in 2024 was that we welcomed into our facilities Mom's House, which is a terrific group that does daycare for the preschool children of single parents who are continuing their education. And in doing so, there were a lot of physical changes to the building we didn't expect. And with the help of Mom's House and the help of many generous people within the community, we were able to pull it off. And now they're underway and in full swing. Go to their website, Mom's House, and you will find out a lot of what they do there. And it's an inspiring thing. I said what they do there. What they do here is maybe what I should say. The door behind me, this one over here, for instance, that was this time last year part of a wall that looked exactly like the rest of that with the windows and a radiator beneath it. And in the infant room, we had to install this emergency door that meant cutting through the wall going into the parking lot. And there was more expense there than you might think. And a special door had to be made, and it required a lot of juggling of different workers and different arrangements. And it took the help of many people to bring that about. But it had to be there so that there would be a way to simply wheel the cribs out, straight out, if there were ever an emergency. And we pray that'll never need to happen. But now it's possible. And it's required for licensing as far as that goes. But, sometimes the stuff that is required is there for good reason. And this is one of those things. And for everybody who supported that project, we're thankful. And we understand their ministry to be good and that there are points where we overlap. One of the people who works in this room has, in the past year, come to help us out on Sunday mornings, working in our nursery during the service, and we're very blessed to have her. And she also volunteers with the kitchen ministry on her own. Um, it's been good. Some of the kids have come to Bible school, and we're very glad that they were there. Mom's House welcomed our staff to their Christmas party this year, and one of our church members uh, knew, shall we say, Santa Claus, and helped him out that at that party. Those of you over 18 will understand what I'm saying about that. Those of you under 18 probably aren't listening to this, so I'm not going to worry about it. Anyhow, the point is that it's a good working relationship and one of ministry. Another physical change that went along with welcoming Mom's House was changing the playground area over from one that had been primarily for elementary kids to one that is now for preschoolers. Again, that was a much bigger project than you would imagine. What I'm standing on right now is a soft, very soft, actually, it's almost comfortable, I'd say, surface that is, again, ideal and meets all the standards that are required. We had to close off the end of the courtyard with the fence again for the kids' safety because they are very young, and it requires a little bit more than just saying, "No, Johnny, don't go over there." Uh, and this also, we want to thank people that helped Mom's House put this in and made it possible. And we're grateful that that happened. And it's a beautiful thing to see the kids playing out here. And actually, we've had a few of our own kids playing out here too, um, and that has been fun to see. Um, the banging you hear is what I'm going to point to next. We are dealing with a leak in the very top of the bell tower, underneath that white part that you can see up there. And so that's been going on for roughly 50 of the 60 years that the building has been standing. And it got to the point where bits and pieces of the ceiling had started to fall in. And we decided we needed to get a serious look at it. Structurally, we found out it's fine and dandy, but it needed a whole lot of other stuff done. And that is why right now you can see in the background bits and pieces of a scaffold on the ground waiting to be assembled, and bits and pieces of a scaffold going up. And we'll give you more upgrades on that as the year goes on. Here in Fellowship Hall, hanging on the wall behind me, are some tinfoil angels. These were made last week, or week and a half ago, the Saturday before Christmas, by the kids who were here for what we called our messy Christmas party. That was one of the things that we started doing during the pandemic when we had to do things outside. And it was muddy, it was wet, we had all that sweet, primarily Sally Doyle, our children's uh, Christian ed person, said, let's just pick up and we'll do some messy activities and not be afraid of the mud and all that stuff. So, even though we're now inside and doing things in a more conventional way, we have continued to hold at holidays messy events. And the messy Christmas party involved making all sorts of things like these um, tinfoil angels, and that was not as messy as making up our own wrapping paper and some of the cookie decorations and all of that, and then sitting down and reading the story of Jesus' birth. Um, so I'm glad to see these tinfoil angels. They're a sign of life. There were some things that we have been doing for quite a while. And while I'm here, let me mention one of them to you, because it's something I kind of really enjoy. It is our um, Sunday after Christmas informal service. So you see the tables are all set up, and on Sunday morning at 9, we're going to have breakfast. And at the end of breakfast, which is going to be baked oatmeal, and it'll be good. And after that, we will simply stay as we are in place and have worship together. And that is, again, seeking, sharing, and showing God's love. You go from a very, very formal kind of a service on Christmas Eve to a breakfast table kind of a worship. And both of them keep God at the center as known in Jesus. And while I'm here, I'll also mention that the same tables we're going to use for that are the ones that we use for our kitchen ministry monthly community meal. And in 2024, we continued that, and it also had begun during the pandemic, but we picked up an extra aspect of it, which is that we began delivering some meals to some people who are on Meals on Wheels that don't always have a chance to get the meal during the weekend. The During the week, Meals on Wheels does a great job of making sure that there's something there for everybody. Again, over the weekend, it can be a little bit more difficult. And we're very glad that the second week of each month, a whole bunch of us will just take one of the Meals on Wheels routes that would be operative during the week, and the food that is made in the kitchen here ends up on the table with somebody who can use it. And we get a chance to stop in and just say hi, just very briefly, and then come on back here and sit down with some of our neighbors and enjoy a good meal. I want to finish up the tour here in the sanctuary. Uh, for me, it was one of the highlights of the year. Highlights of the past several years, frankly, that we had an unusually large number of baptisms. In 2019, I'm showing my age there, 2019 and in 2020, we didn't have any baptisms at all. Now, part of that was simply because of the whole pandemic thing. But in 2021, we had one. In 2022 and 3, there were two. And I'm not saying that that's a horrible thing. That's a great thing. I'm glad that they were there. But this year, uh, in the space of 3 months, we celebrated 7 baptisms, and not all of babies. There were some kids who have been part of our community, and these were elementary school age kids. And I really, one of them saw a baby baptized, and she realized that she had not been baptized, and went and she talked with her mother and said, what happened? Why? Well, tell me about what happened when I was baptized. And her mother said, you know. It hadn't happened. Anyway, these kids began asking questions about what baptism means and what the grace of God means. And they were asking questions that were particular for their age and appropriate to their age. But it's our belief that God's grace is available for anyone at any age, whether it's the child that has just been born, or whether I mentioned at the start of this whole thing, the people who crossed the century mark. God's grace is there all the way along that whole span. And as a result, we had among the kids who were baptized, um, we had some that were in elementary school who were there with their parents' support and with the support of people they already knew, learning what it means to be supported by the Holy Spirit in a deep and in lasting and in a challenging but hopeful way that will be with them from here on. And although I say it's better to be baptized as a child than um, than not, because that grace is there from the beginning, and it's great to have it right from the beginning. I would also say, if you're an adult who has not been baptized, give me a call. If there's a good reason that you are ready, we'll follow through with it. You'd be more than welcome. But to me, it indicates that God is active out in the world, and some of the things that we expect do not take place, and some things we never expect take place. And when I look at the year ahead, I take this year as being a sign that something is happening out there, that people are feeling the stirrings of God in their hearts. And as I'll use that horrible word again, challenging, as the past few years have been for everybody in our society, and are likely to be for some time to come. What I'm also seeing is God's promise that was made by Jesus, who said, I will be with you always, even to the end of the age. I'm seeing that. And I think we as a group are seeing that. And I'm grateful. And as we head into this new year, I would say that even though I have no idea what it will hold, and even though I do have an idea of some of the challenges and problems and obstacles that I know we're going to come up against, I also know that God is bigger than all of that. And that sometimes those things that do come up in front of us teach us exactly how much we can depend on the Lord and are part of our own witness to others who are seeking, because we can share our stories with them if we show them our love. So 2025 may be dangerous of me to say it, but bring it on. Amen? and amen.